What if there existed someone who accurately forecasted the champions of the previous 3 World Cups? We're not talking about picking teams that made it to the finals or identifying potential surprise contenders, but pinpointing the exact nations that would ultimately lift the trophy. In 2014, he called Germany. 4 years later, in 2018, he predicted France. Then in 2022, he correctly identified Argentina before the tournament even began. For anyone who follows sports betting, this kind of track record represents something close to perfection. For passionate football supporters around the world, it seems almost beyond the realm of possibility. The World Cup tournament only takes place once every 4 years, which means there are extremely limited opportunities to test any predictive system. A single poor performance in a crucial match, one player receiving a red card at the wrong moment, or the unpredictable outcome of a penalty shootout can instantly end what seemed like an unstoppable campaign. An economist named Joachim Clement has developed a sophisticated prediction model that has successfully identified the winner of the last 3 consecutive tournaments. He has now publicly shared his forecast for the 2026 World Cup. If his latest prediction proves accurate once again, we are all about to witness one of the most surprising and unexpected championship runs in the entire history of modern international football. Let's begin by examining exactly who this individual is and understanding the mechanics of how his predictive model actually functions. Before diving into the specific prediction he's made for the upcoming tournament, it's important to understand the background of the person who created this system. Joachim Clement doesn't work as a football coach, and he's not employed as a talent scout for any professional club. His actual profession is as an economist and market strategist. His entire professional career has been built around analyzing probabilities, forecasting future outcomes in various fields, and identifying meaningful patterns in data that other analysts and experts tend to overlook. Several years ago, he made the decision to apply this same analytical framework and way of thinking to the World Cup tournament. Rather than relying on popular narratives, emotional attachments to certain teams, or the subjective opinions of fans and pundits, he wanted to approach the tournament as if it were a massive probability puzzle that could be solved through rigorous analysis. His model then runs simulations of the entire World Cup thousands upon thousands of times. Imagine if you could replay the entire 2026 World Cup tournament 10,000 separate times, with slight variations in each iteration. In some of those simulated tournaments, France emerges victorious. In other simulations, Spain claims the championship. Sometimes Brazil manages to put together a deep run that takes them all the way to the final stages. Sometimes England finally manages to bring football home after decades of disappointment. However, after running enough of these simulations, clear patterns start to emerge from all that data. You begin to see that certain national teams consistently advance to the quarter-final stage across most simulations. Certain teams regularly reach the final match. And occasionally, there's one particular team that keeps discovering a pathway to the trophy that most football analysts, journalists, and fans aren't even discussing as a realistic possibility. The obvious question becomes, how accurate has this model actually been in previous tournaments? Normally, if someone claims to have built a system that can reliably predict the outcomes of football tournaments, my natural reaction would be deep skepticism. Football is inherently chaotic and unpredictable. That fundamental unpredictability is literally what makes the World Cup such a special and captivating event for billions of people around the globe. However, Clement's historical track record is precisely what captures people's attention and makes them take his predictions seriously. According to his own documentation, earlier versions of this model correctly identified Germany as the 2014 champion, France as the 2018 champion, and Argentina as the 2022 champion. Successfully identifying the eventual tournament champions 3 consecutive times in a row is extraordinarily difficult to accomplish. Consider all the variables and everything that can potentially go wrong during a World Cup tournament. Key players suffer injuries at crucial moments, matches are decided by penalty shootouts, which are essentially coin flips. Referee decisions can completely change the trajectory of a game. Last-minute goals can instantly reverse what seemed like certain outcomes. One fortunate bounce of the ball, or one unfortunate deflection, can change everything. Entire tournaments can pivot on a single moment just like that. This historical accuracy is exactly why Clement's decision to release his 2026 prediction has caused football fans all around the world to immediately pay close attention to what he's forecasting this time. Now let's examine how the model predicts the 2026 World Cup will actually play out from start to finish. The most helpful way to conceptualize this prediction is to think of it as a movie script with a clear narrative arc. The eventual champion, according to this model, doesn't receive an easy or favorable draw. They don't somehow manage to avoid all the strongest teams in the tournament. Instead, they survive encounters with them, one after another, in an absolutely brutal gauntlet. The model begins with the Netherlands winning their group ahead of Japan, Sweden, and Tunisia. There's nothing particularly shocking or controversial about that group stage prediction. But from that initial point forward, the road to the championship becomes absolutely brutal and unforgiving. In the round of 32, their first knockout stage opponent is predicted to be Morocco. If you're a casual football fan who doesn't follow international football closely, that matchup might not sound particularly intimidating or dangerous. However, this is the exact same Morocco national team that became the first African nation in the entire history of the World Cup to ever reach a semi-final. They charged directly into a match against the Dutch, but according to the model, the Netherlands manages to survive that encounter. But the challenges facing them are only getting started and becoming more difficult. In the round of 16, they face Canada. Canada is one of the 3 host nations for the 2026 tournament. The model predicts that Canada will successfully advance from their group stage and win their first knockout match to reach the round of 16. Try to imagine the atmosphere surrounding that match, with a host nation playing absolutely packed stadiums filled to capacity, massive public support from coast to coast, and essentially the entire continent rallying behind the Canadian team. Yet once again, according to these simulations, the Netherlands discovers a way to advance through that pressure-filled situation. Having already been battle-tested and hardened against a very good Morocco side, facing Canada might feel like a slight reprieve or breathing room. But the quarter-final stage is where they truly meet their match and face their greatest test. Waiting for them in the quarterfinals is France. France enters the tournament as one of the overwhelming favorites to win the entire competition. They field a team absolutely stacked with world-class talent at virtually every position. They have elite athletes, elite tactical depth, and championship experience. The model predicts that France will comfortably navigate their side of the bracket and arrive at the quarterfinals exactly where fans and experts expect them to be. But somehow, according to this prediction, the Dutch managed to knock them out. At this point in the tournament, social media platforms would absolutely be losing their collective minds. One of the overwhelming tournament favorites would be eliminated and heading home. The Netherlands would suddenly find themselves in the Final Four, the semi-final stage. Standing in their way would be Spain. For many analysts and experts, Spain represents the single best team in the world entering the 2026 tournament. They are the reigning European champions. They possess an elite midfield that controls games. They have incredible depth across the squad, and they possibly have the greatest player in the entire world right now leading their attack. But once again, according to the model's simulations, the Dutch somehow managed to survive. At that point, they would have defeated Morocco, Canada, France, and Spain in consecutive matches. That's not a favorable or easy path through the tournament. That's an absolute nightmare bracket that would test any team to their absolute limits. The model predicts that Portugal will emerge from the opposite side of the bracket after defeating England in their semi-final match. This means the final would feature 2 historic football nations that have both produced absolute legends throughout their football history. We would see Virgil van Dijk facing off against Cristiano Ronaldo in a World Cup final for the ages. This is a fantasy final for numerous reasons, from the individual player matchups to the historical significance for both nations. But it's also a final that seems extremely unlikely when you consider all the other talented teams in the tournament. Yet the model's thousands of simulations have predicted it nonetheless, again and again. And in that final match, the Netherlands would finally end more than 50 years of heartbreak and disappointment. Finally, they would give Dutch football the one trophy that has always managed to escape their grasp throughout generations. The Netherlands would become the 2026 World Cup champions. The important question becomes, why does the model consistently land on the Dutch as champions? The first major reason is overall balance across the squad. They may not possess the individual star power and generational talent of France's roster. They may not have the midfield depth and control that Spain can deploy, but they demonstrate strength in almost every area of the game. They are defensively organized and difficult to break down, technically gifted with the ball at their feet, and tactically disciplined in their approach to matches. And perhaps most importantly, they don't have any glaring weaknesses that opponents can specifically target and exploit. The second major reason is matchup strength against elite competition. The model believes the Dutch perform exceptionally well when facing many of the tournament's strongest contenders and favorites, not necessarily because they're overwhelmingly better than those opponents in raw talent, but because they remain consistently competitive across every single area of the pitch in every phase of the game. The Netherlands may genuinely be the greatest football nation in the entire world to never win a World Cup tournament. And that historical fact is a major reason why this particular prediction resonates so deeply with football fans. The Netherlands has produced generation after generation of absolute legends. You have Johan Cruyff, you have Marco van Basten, you have Dennis Bergkamp, you have Arjen Robben, you have Robin van Persie, and of course in the current generation you have Virgil van Dijk leading the team. Multiple generations of footballing legends and icons. They have appeared in 3 separate World Cup final matches throughout their history, yet they have never managed to claim the trophy. The model is essentially predicting that one of international football's greatest unfinished stories and most painful near misses finally receives its proper ending and vindication. So what does everyone else in the football world think about this prediction? This is where things become genuinely controversial and where Clement's prediction stands in stark contrast to conventional wisdom. Because almost nobody else in the football analysis community agrees with this forecast. Most professional analysts, betting markets, major sportsbooks, and other prediction models have the tournament favorites looking something more like this. Spain, France, England, Argentina, and then Brazil round out the top 5. Those are the 5 teams that dominate almost every single serious prediction heading into the 2026 tournament. The Netherlands, in contrast, most analysts place them somewhere between 6th and 10th in their rankings. They're not considered complete outsiders with no chance. They're not viewed as massive underdogs, but they're definitely not considered favorites to win the tournament. They're usually described as a dark horse selection. They're seen as a team certainly capable of making a semi-final run, maybe even reaching the final match if things break favorably, but definitely not the team that's most likely to actually win it all when the tournament concludes. And honestly, when you look at the competition, that conventional wisdom is completely understandable. Spain have looked like the most complete and well-rounded team in all of international football over recent years. France continues to have absolutely absurd squad depth and championship pedigree and experience. England might genuinely have the best chance they've ever had in their entire football history, and they possess the deepest attacking talent pool of any team in the tournament. Argentina, of course, are the defending champions and will be motivated to repeat. And Brazil is Brazil, which is to say they always have to be considered among the favorites, regardless of circumstances. On paper, when you evaluate squad quality and depth, all of them have stronger and more compelling cases than the Dutch, which is exactly why Clement's prediction has generated so much attention, discussion, and debate. He's not picking the obvious choice that everyone expects. He's not picking the betting favorite that the markets have identified. He's not picking the consensus champion that journalists and analysts agree upon. He's picking a team that very few people actually expect to win when they sit down and make their predictions. And that element of surprise is exactly what makes his prediction so fascinating and compelling. Because if he turns out to be wrong this time, it simply becomes another bold forecast that missed the mark and failed to materialize. But if he's right, and the Netherlands really do survive consecutive matches against Morocco, Canada, France, Spain, and Portugal to lift the trophy in the final, then Joachim Clement won't just be remembered as the man who successfully predicted 3 World Cup winners in a row. He'll be forever known as the man who predicted 4 consecutive World Cup champions, an achievement that would be almost impossible to comprehend. So what do you think about this prediction? Is the Netherlands a legitimate World Cup contender that people are underestimating? Or is this finally the year that Clement's model gets it wrong and fails to identify the champion? Let me know your personal prediction for who will be crowned champion in the comments section below. And if you genuinely enjoyed this detailed breakdown and analysis, be sure to subscribe to this channel for more random content covering topics that I find interesting and want to discuss.